How are you doing, you wonderful nerds? Let's talk about the real origin of Spider Gwen. As we wrap up our month of Spider-Man videos for Webruary, I'm reminded just how much I've talked about Gwen Stacy, yet also how little. I'm confident that she has only come up in reference to her death and no other time for anything else. And perhaps for a good reason. Gwen used to be one of those characters who was supposed to die and remain dead forever. Her death was not only a seminal moment of Peter Parker's life and career as Spider-Man, but also marked a turning point in the comics industry as a whole. Jerry Conway, who worked on the night Gwen Stacy died story, believes that it may have contributed to the rise of comics as an art form to apparent domination of modern American pop media. Of course, many other factors shifted the tone and power of comics, but there's no doubt that the death of Gwen Stacy made an impact. That's poor choice of words. But that impact might have been diminished and forgettable if she came back to life just as comic book characters are prone to do. That permanence secured this moment as one of the most memorable and meaningful in Spider-Man's history. Then, Gwen Stacy did come back to life. First as a clone, but more recently as a hero from an alternate Earth with her own ongoing title. But things could have been very different if Dan Slott got his way. When he was planning out the expansive Spider-Verse crossover, not only did he have an entirely different costume design for Gwen, but also had initially intended to create a spin-off series revolving around a different Spider character. We'll get to him later, but first, a little history of Earth 65 Spider-Woman, aka Spider Gwen. In this alternate reality, Gwen Stacy is a drummer in a band called the Mary Janes when she is bitten by the famed radioactive spider. She was granted essentially the same powers as Spider-Man: super strength, enhanced senses, the ability to climb walls, etc. She dons that fantastic hoodie costume and becomes Spider-Woman, not to be confused with all the other characters named Spider-Woman, who we'll eventually talk about in a future video. But instead of immediately going out and risking her life to save others, Gwen first has a little fun on TV, just like Peter Parker did in the main Marvel universe. Oh, and speaking of Pete, in Spider-Gwen's universe, Peter Parker is the one who dies an impactful death. Driven mad by his classmates bullying him and inspired by the idea of Spider-Woman, Peter injects himself with a formula that turns him into that universe's lizard, so he could enact his revenge and be special, like Spider-Woman. In her grief, Aunt May blames Spider-Woman for Peter's death. Gwen is now seen as a murderer. But instead of allowing her identity to be shaped by the negative press, she continues to wear her mask and save innocent lives to make Peter's death count for something. Because with great power comes an even greater responsibility. You didn't think we'd escape from that line in this universe. Spider-Gwen made her debut in Edge of Spider-Verse #2, which was part of the huge Spider-Man event that ran from November of 2014 to February of 2015, and includes all kinds of colorful and unusual Spider-Men, women, and pigs. There were appearances by previously established characters like Spider-Man 2099, Miles Morales, and Kane, but also a bunch of brand new heroes to flesh out the entire Spider-Verse, like Lady Spider, Spider-Man UK, and of course, Spider-Gwen. The event's writer, Dan Slott, explained that in his mind, there was always going to be a Gwen Stacy who was bitten by the radioactive spider instead of Peter. That character was involved from the start, as far as he was concerned. And while her costume design spread like wildfire practically overnight, that already famous hoodie design almost never happened. In fact, Spider-Gwen would have looked entirely different if Slott had gotten his way. Originally, Slott pictured Spider-Gwen wearing an arachnified version of the clothes she wore in the story where she was killed. As he describes it, quote, "The visual I had for her was pretty much the night Gwen Stacy died outfit, but all red and blue with web patterns and a half mask. She had the trench coat, but instead of it being lime green, it'd be red with webs." End quote. If you're having trouble picturing what that costume would look like, YaxiArt on Twitter did me a favor and drew up the design. He is a real champ for putting this together very last minute for me. Definitely check out his other work that I've linked in the description. So what happened to this costume design? Well, a few things. The Spider-Verse story was delayed about a year, which changed a bunch of the details as the creative team started digging in. When Slott initially plotted out the story a year before, he included these specific design notes for Spider-Gwen's costume. But when a year passed and the time came to start moving forward with the event, those notes were never sent to Jason Latour or Robbie Rodriguez, who made Edge of Spider-Verse #2, introducing the Spider-Gwen character. Slott wasn't exactly happy with their design at first. Not that he thought it was bad, just that it wasn't what he had in mind. Again, this was a project that was delayed for a year. During that time, he had a consistent mental image of how Spider-Gwen would look like to him. Seeing the designs come back from Robbie Rodriguez with the hoodie and the different colors, it just wasn't what he wanted. Quote, "Even though these great designs came in, I was like, that's not Spider-Gwen. I was the only guy going, they have to change it. Then I got to see what they were doing, and I was so glad no one listened to me, because this character is awesome. It's so much better. End quote. With her first appearance, Spider Gwen became a massive hit. The comic sold out and quickly went into multiple printings. Not long after, she received an ongoing title once Spider-Verse had ended. But, as Dan Slott explains, that was never the plan. In fact, a Spider-Verse spinoff was meant for some completely different character, and I do mean completely different. Quote, the original plan, back when Spider-Verse was a Superior Spider-Man story, was that when everything went back to normal, Spider-Ham would end up being stuck in our world. We would do some Spider-Ham one-shots, and it would be very much a Howard the Duck-like take on Spider-Ham. End quote. But as you may recall, Howard the Duck himself started a new run around the time Spider-Verse was winding down, so they figured there was no use in doing essentially the same thing, but with Spider-Ham. But that didn't mean they had to scrap the idea of a Spider-Verse spinoff altogether. There was one clear breakout character from the event of whom fans desperately wanted more stories. Quote, the whole Spider-Gwen book happened because, dear God, the fans made it happen. Man, did Jason and Robbie kill on Gwen's debut issue. With that, it was like, a Spider-Ham book? Get real, we're doing a Spider-Gwen book. End quote. The idea of continuing her story was daunting to writer Jason Latour, who had to take a night to sleep on it and ask himself what he knew about Gwen Stacy. Not just as a girl whose death affected Spider-Man, but as a character in and of herself. But there wasn't a lot to go off of, which, along with the story being set in an alternate Earth, provided Latour with an opportunity to update Gwen for a modern audience. Gwen is not simply the love interest who died anymore, but a fully realized character in a super cool costume. But I would love to know what you think. Do you like Spider-Gwen at all? Was it a good idea to effectively bring Gwen Stacy back from the grave, or should Gwen have just been left alone? Also, I'm gonna put up a poll right here. Which of these two costume designs do you like more? I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. We're gonna have a big live stream this Saturday going over your thoughts and comments from all of our Webruary videos. It's gonna be a fun time. Tune in for that. Also, if you are a big fan of Gwen Stacy, my buddy Jay over at Fancy Teeth did an entire month of Gwen Stacy videos that you should absolutely check out. He is a great guy and he's just getting his channel off the ground, so hop over there and watch a few of his videos. Maybe spam his comments by telling him, I don't know, he's the reason Gwen died. That should make him real sad. Or don't do that. Either way, I've got an entire playlist for you right here to sit back and enjoy. You won't regret it. Actually, I don't want to make any promises. After all, I did hear an internet rumor that he is the reason Gwen Stacy died. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Scott, reminding you to read between the panels and grow smarter through comics. See ya.